All right, let's dive right into the inner workings of our minds. Have you ever stopped to think about the real difference between a gut feeling, a logical deduction, and just a simple inference? Well, we're about to break down exactly how these processes shape pretty much everything we think and do. So here's our game plan. First up, we're going to draw a really important line between reasoning and inference. Then we'll see how that plays out in the animal kingdom, which is fascinating stuff, before we turn the spotlight back on our own minds. And to wrap it all up, we'll get into the whole mysterious world of intuition and, what it actually feels like to think.
Okay, let's get started. To really get a handle on how we think, the first thing we have to do is nail down what reasoning actually means. How is it different from all the other stuff our minds just do on autopilot?
I mean, we all think we know what reasoning is, right? It's that conscious, step-by-step thinking we do all the time. But, having that gut-level understanding is one thing. Trying to create a really precise definition, that's where it gets surprisingly tough. And here's the core problem. In fields like philosophy and psychology, you'll see reasoning defined in two different ways. One focuses on the goal, and the other on the process. The thing is, these two definitions don't actually point to the same thing. If you define it by its goal, coming to new conclusions, well, that really just describes inference in general. But if you define it by its process, actively paying attention to your reasons, now that pinpoints what we call reasoning. Let's make this a little more concrete. Say you're trying to figure out what to do tonight. You might think to yourself, okay, there's nothing good at the movies, the weather's pretty bad, but hey, this new book looks awesome. See that train of thought, where you're consciously weighing the reasons? That's reasoning. The decision doesn't just appear out of nowhere. You're deliberately working your way to it. So the big takeaway here is that inference is the much, much broader term. It's really just extracting new information from information you already have, regardless of the process. This even covers all those automatic, unthinking processes that animals use every single second just to survive and figure out what's coming next. And that brings us right back to reasoning. We can now see it for what it is, a very specific type of inference, where we are consciously paying attention to our reasons. I mean, just think about it for a second. Your brain is making inferences constantly, all day long, but how often are you actually doing that deliberate, focused act of reasoning? It's a tiny fraction of the time, right? Now, it's worth pointing out that historically, people often used inference and reasoning to mean the same thing, and some thinkers still do. But for what we're talking about here, to really get a grasp on the special place reasoning holds, we have to draw a very sharp line between the two. Okay, so now that we've got that distinction down, let's see inference in action. And we're going to look at a truly amazing example from the animal kingdom. So we're diving into the work of biologist Rüdiger Wenner. He spent decades studying this particular desert ant, Cataglyphus fortis. And this quote really sets the stage for us. A super harsh, basically featureless landscape where you'd need some serious navigational skills just to make it. Okay, so take a look at this path. You can see the ant leaves its nest, that's the N, and it goes on this long, totally winding search for food, which is the F. But check this out. The second it finds the food, it turns around and makes a nearly perfect straight line right back home. So the question is, how on earth does it do that in a desert with no landmarks? Well, the answer is just incredible. It has this super sophisticated built-in toolkit for navigation. First, it's got a celestial compass. It actually uses polarized sunlight to keep track of its direction. Then it has an internal odometer, so it can figure out how far it's gone just by counting its steps. And then, and this is the amazing part, a process called path integration kicks in. Its tiny little brain combines all that data to figure out the exact direction and distance back to the nest. And it's all done completely unconsciously. So this incredible story of the desert ant really shows us three basic things about any cognitive system. First, cognition is all about helping an organism move around and do things. Second, it goes way beyond just the raw information coming in from the senses. And third, these really powerful inferences are often handled by very specialized, purpose-built mechanisms in the brain. Okay, so let's take those same principles now and see how they apply to us, to our own minds. And we'll start with something as basic as perception. You've probably seen this famous illusion by Roger Shepard before. It's more than just a cool drawing, though. I mean, at first glance, it's simple, right? One monster chasing another down a tunnel. But this picture actually reveals something really deep about the unconscious inferences your brain is making this very second. So just look at it. Which monster looks bigger? Pretty much everyone says the same thing. The one in the back, the chaser,
definitely looks bigger than the one in the front.
But they're not. They're actually the exact same size. If you were to take a ruler to the screen, you'd see they are identical. So why does one look so much bigger? It's because your brain is making an automatic inference. It sees the tunnel, right? The converging lines tell it that the monster in the back must be farther away. And your brain has a rule. If two things look the same size but one is farther away, then the farther one must actually be bigger in real life. It's a totally unconscious inference, and in this case, it creates a powerful illusion.
And this same kind of automatic inference is happening all the time with our memory, too. The researcher Frederick Bartlett showed that memory isn't like a video recording. It's more like an active reconstruction of events. For instance, in one study, people watched a video of a ball being kicked, but the exact moment of contact was edited out. But later, they remembered seeing it because their brains just inferred that it must have happened. Same thing in another study. People were shown a picture of a beach with the umbrella edited out, but they later recalled seeing an umbrella because, well, their brains inferred that a beach scene should have one. All right, so we've seen how these unconscious inferences are constantly shaping what we see and what we remember. Now let's move into that interesting middle ground, that powerful and kind of mysterious world of intuition.
So here's the classic definition for you. An intuition is a judgment or a decision that we make, and we feel like it's right, but we have no idea why it's right. It's not like perception, which feels like it's just coming at you from the outside world. And it's not like reasoning, where you know the steps you took. An intuition just sort of shows up. It just arrives in your head, fully formed, and it just feels right.
Daniel Kahneman's famous two-system model really helps us understand this. What he calls System 1, or intuition, is this fascinating mix. On the one hand, its process is a lot like perception. It's fast, automatic, effortless. But on the other hand, its content is more like reasoning, or System 2. It's dealing with abstract concepts about the past, present, and future. So it's stuck in this weird middle ground, almost defined by being not quite one thing and not quite the other.
So if intuition doesn't come from its own special brain mechanism, then why does it feel so different from everything else? Well, that brings us to our final piece of the puzzle, something called metacognition, which is basically thinking about thinking.
The key idea here is that the best way to understand intuition is to look at its metacognitive features. Think about it. We know what our intuition is telling us, we're conscious of the content, but the process that got us there is a total black box. And yet, even without knowing why, these intuitions show up with this strong feeling of confidence. And also a sense of authorship. We feel like they are our thoughts, right? Not like a perception, which feels like it's coming at us from the world. It's really the experience of that inference that makes us call it an intuition.
And this all leads to a final, pretty provocative thought. We tend to think of reasoning as this totally transparent process, something we're in complete control of. But what this suggests is something much deeper. Even when we're consciously reasoning, those hidden automatic inferential processes are still humming away in the background. We don't actually get rid of the mystery of where the thought comes from, we just displace it. We become aware of the reasons we're picking, but the deep down machinery that makes those reasons feel right in the first place, that's just as hidden from us as the source of any intuition. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How much of our own thinking do we ever really get to see?